Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for listening. Well, as you know, we're on break right now from posting interviews so that I can refresh the format of the show. And instead, we're reading essays, most of which we published on the magazine side of our website over the last year. Now, today's essay is called How Wild Sexual Exploration Made Me a Better Woman. And it's read by the author, the redoubtable Lucy Gillespie. Now, as an aside, our magazine editor, Robin Rinaldi, told me at the time that we released this essay that she thought it was the best essay we'd ever published. And I have to agree with her, this one is exceptional. So I'm really excited to present it to you today. Now, as an aside, you should know in advance that this one is definitely not PG. So fair warning for whatever that's worth. All right, here we go.
I spent most of my early 20s obsessed with achieving the alpha female trifecta of marriage, family, and career. Sexual exploration was what women did when they had neither a plan nor self-respect. The goal of every relationship was marriage. In service of that goal, I was committed to playing the role of useful and supportive partner. I wanted to be seen as marriage material. I was passive in relationships, preferring to adapt or dismiss my needs for the sake of preserving harmony. In my career, as with my relationship, I was also addicted to being useful. I was the cool girl, capable, powerful, and easygoing, with seemingly unlimited capacity. As I saw it, my worth to the fickle world of independent theatre directly correlated to the degree of generosity and support I could offer. And so I fundraised for other shows at the expense of my own. I took on literary managing roles and filled my hours obsessively reading, reviewing, and finessing others' work, while letting my own plays go untended. I overextended myself by working with bosses and companies that paid my efforts in brownie points. I didn't apply for real jobs out of the assumption that, in spite of holding an excellent degree, my passion for writing and theatre voided my eligibility to serve the world in other ways. And finally, I put the demands of poorly paying jobs before my own work because I viewed my own work as selfish, something to do if there was time and it was good enough. Our society, and arguably the world, sees women as sexual objects, not sexual agents. Female bodies and feminine qualities are expected to be soft, appealing, yielding, accepting, disarming, and flexible. Women are producers, not directors. Women are actresses, not writers. In nuance and outright, women are expected to handle, manage, accept, and reflect input by men. We respond rather than initiate. We are diplomats, not politicians. And the conditioning we've received, reinforcing passivity and receptivity, conflicts directly with a society that prioritizes dynamism and entrepreneurship. How do you initiate, force, instigate, while remaining soft, diplomatic, and accepting? The dichotomy is most pronounced in two arenas: sexuality and authority. Sexuality is more than how we relate to sex. It's how we relate to the world. It's how we choose to identify with the world, how we style ourselves, and how we flirt and play. It's what drives our desires and our feelings of satisfaction when we fulfill them. To challenge one's own sexuality to become more adventurous and supple will therefore affect and activate every facet of your life. As both professional beings and sexual beings, women need to activate. When I activated sexually, when sex became not something I was available for, but something I sought to understand through my own needs, my relationship to the world improved. At the time, my marriage was just one more obligation, one more way in which to serve and be helpful, one more set of needs to prioritize over my own. At the time, I had no idea what was making me feel so trapped and furious. I got a divorce. I blasted out of that relationship like a cannonball. Determined not to fall into the same love as a duty trap, I flung myself into the New York fetish scene. Where better to challenge old habits than in an environment dictated by totally different principles? Sex positivity, fucking for fucking's sake, multiple partners. No expectations, no future plans, YOLO! Throughout 2 years of graduate school, I bounced from weeks of academia to weekends of drugs, acrylic nails, cheap lingerie, and hedonistic all-nighters. Whether or not this revolution was necessary, the urge was strong. It was time to break shit and start from scratch. At my first party, a sex-positive immersive performance fundraiser called The Art of Restraint, I got flogged in lingerie in front of a crowd of beautiful cheering people while my best friend showered me with champagne. The sheer adrenaline overpowered any nagging questions in the back of my mind about what I was doing or why. These were the thrills I'd been missing. At my second party, after doing a line of coke, my first, off the thigh of a hot girl I'd just met named Allie, my date, far more experienced than I, made the executive decision to doggy bag Allie for a threesome, also my first. I was not consulted, and I raised no issues. I was a cool girl, wasn't I? In the cab, Ali and my date made gleeful plans, but I got quiet. Was this what I wanted? Didn't he just use me to get her home? 20 minutes later, lying in bed in my date's lush Moroccan-themed bedroom, he buried himself into Ali, whispering, "You feel like home." And I choked. I slid off the bed and ran into the bathroom where I curled up on the floor and cried until morning. In that moment, I was back at square one, the eager team player who gets taken advantage of. Only this time it was obvious I'd done it to myself. When it came to sex, I had always been on the spectrum of vanilla to prude. I believed, first and foremost, in love. To that effect, I had an aversion to promiscuity, which I saw as a callous waste of the gift of true intimacy. I felt stronger than my peers for being able to sustain a long relationship through the hormonal early 20s. I felt more mature for having the prudence to establish love early, instead of wasting time and energy on one-night stands or playing first-date musical chairs like some friends. I felt righteous because, though my relationship wasn't always easy, I was prioritizing us over wily, petty desires. Sure, there were times I wanted to give up, fuck around, or just disappear on an adventure, but I understood that life was about making choices and sticking with them. By that arcane logic, the purpose of sex was to service our love. And since my purpose was service, it was my job to take care of my partner's needs. My needs and my pleasure were my business, not ours. One night at my first sex party was enough to show me the absurdity of this conditioning. And I wasn't alone in these beliefs. I was just one of many women who'd been hypnotized by the gaslighting of a society that is terrified of female sexual agency. Promiscuity in women is negatively labeled a symptom of low self-regard. That assumption is based on the bizarre premise that women have a limited capacity for intimacy, that if women are overused, we will break, like bicycles. Or maybe we will know too much, or expect too much from future partners. Or what exactly? We'll be bad mothers? Incapable of commitment, become addicts, peddle drugs and live on the street, go to Burning Man, get kidnapped and cost our fathers thousands in ransom money, or simply never ever find a husband. Men are encouraged to sow their wild oats, but women have biological clocks. And actually, it's better to hurry up with the baby making because that distant cousin might just have polycystic ovary syndrome, which is apparently super common these days and just awful. And what about HPV, which destroys a woman's fertility, i.e. reason to live, without a single symptom? And it can't be detected in men, and it isn't prevented by condoms. You know that sluts get raped, right? Soda hoes and skanks. Actually, 28 is getting up there. Have you thought about freezing your eggs? You should really think about that. Female sex is deemed sacred, but after jumping down the rabbit hole of sex positivity, I realized the sacredness of sex, and of relationships altogether, was a golden cage, a subtle, sneaky way to keep women locked up and fearful. That first rough night aside, the sex-positive scene taught me how to overcome this conditioning to become a sexual agent, and through that, to activate my relationship with work and with the world. My new friends called bullshit on the great lie that a woman's pleasure is low priority compared to responsibility and commitment. The women expected to get off, and the women's partners had no interest in a one-sided sexual encounter. Suddenly, I had to fight for something I'd hardly paid attention to, my needs. The hardest part of joining the sex-positive scene was facing the constant question, what did I want? Through exploration of that question, I noticed a change in my relationship to work. I started to say no more often. And it felt good. No, I didn't want to take an unpaid internship that could develop into something cool. No, I didn't want to read a friend's script and give notes. No, I didn't want to work an extra few hours this weekend or take on that new student. Why? No reason, just don't want to. It also became easier to say yes to myself. Yes, I wanted to attend that residency, and yes, I could wake up at 6 a.m. to work on the application. Yes, I do want to write a web series, and yes, I can and will produce it myself. And yes, I will use my own name. Sexuality was not the only way in which I'd been passive, but it was the easiest place for me to see how passivity was hurting me. Sex, unlike my career, had fewer variables. When your work is collaborative and weighted within a large industry, it's hard to examine a single variable, your input, out of context. Your behavior could be the problem, but problems are equally likely to be caused by co-workers, office politics, standard practices, high competition, low resources, or any one of 1,000 possibilities. In sex, however, the transaction is simpler. The causality of actions to consequences is easier to trace. When you're having lots of sex with lots of partners, it becomes obvious what patterns you are responsible for. And if you're also witnessing a lot of sex, you start to understand new sexual paradigms. Through the scene, I came to recognize my patterns of passivity. I also witnessed other patterns that were active and joyful, and I was able to try new things with trusted partners. I did not need to remain trapped in a passive cycle of support, self-denial, and frustration. The hidden door was revealed. Sexual activation took away my fear and replaced it with curiosity, a thicker skin, and a habit of going after my pleasure. From there, I started to see possibilities where before there had only been negative judgment. Switching on has improved my ability to make real connections. Knowing what I want means I can spot opportunities and funnel them into profitable projects. And becoming activated has led me to see myself not only as an equal partner in all relationships, but as a leader. That has yielded greater respect, engagement, and support from colleagues, friends, and loved ones. When I came up with the idea for a web series called Unicorn Land, I had no filmmaking experience, no filmmaking network, and no money. Moreover, everyone I reached out to for support merely reinforced the foolishness of self-producing. But this story about a woman who explores her sexuality post-divorce was important to me and, I suspected, to many other women. I felt a responsibility to spread this awareness. From an activated perspective, fear and resistance are laughable obstacles. No longer looking for signs of acceptance, I was determined to see it through. I found a director, Nick Levins, who was game to try a new form. Together we found a producer, and I pulled together the financing. We perfected the script with table readings, rewrites, and hours of late-night phone calls. I established connections in the indie film community that yielded our crew of seasoned experts. We cast the series after I fielded dozens of emails from actors who were understandably wary of such a sexually explicit project. When a major backer pulled funding 2 weeks before filming, I scrambled for more money. When half our locations fell through, I begged friends, bribed building managers, and convinced a friend to cash out his Starwood points on a fancy hotel penthouse. I threw a sex party shoot and convinced 30 skittish extras to show up and bear all. I connected with an exquisite feminist lingerie brand, Thistle Inspire, who agreed to provide all the lingerie costumes. I convinced a restaurant, Dar 525, to donate delicious, protein-filled lunches for the shoot. A partnership with Birch Coffee kept us bright-eyed. On longer, harder shoot days, I stayed in the kitchen baking endless trays of granola bars. The fun didn't stop after shooting. When we lost a critical post-production grant and had no money to finish the series, I launched and managed a Kickstarter campaign for $15,000. We beat the goal a week ahead of schedule. While the director and editor cut the episodes, I drafted contracts and solicited legal help to negotiate 10 complex music licensing deals. All these typical obstacles failed to paralyze or intimidate me. Things that would have tripped up my former self simply made the project more interesting. Because agency, having a goal and going after it, makes life fun. Agency brings on shenanigans and mischief and machinations and daredevil deeds. All those things heroes do, while princesses wait in towers brushing their hair. Too many women hang back sheepish and apprehensive, convinced that the fear they feel is reality. It's not. The journey that inspired Unicorn Land is very likely not yours. I do not and never would advocate for a one-size-fits-all approach to sexuality, nor would I make generalized recommendations about relationship models. But I do want you to watch Unicorn Land. Whether you're straight, gay, queer, cis, trans, kinky, vanilla, single, partnered, married, or it's complicated, it might give you some things to think about.
Well, that's it for Lucy's essay, folks. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. You should definitely check out Unicorn Land if you haven't already seen it. It's on Vimeo and it's free. It's definitely worth your time. I'll put a link in the show notes, or if you don't have an opportunity to get to our show notes, you can just Google it. Unicorn Land web series will get you there. All right, that's it for today, folks. If you'd like to contact me or if you have any ideas for the show, please feel free to reach out. I'm at host@together.guide. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at together_show. And Facebook is facebook.com/togethershow. All right, that's it for this week. Talk to you soon. Bye.